Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being so understanding about that. I'm a little more invigorated now, so it'll benefit all of us. I think that I got to take a little break and go walk the dogs. Plus, these are two pretty big streams. I mean, they're two pretty big subject matters, so they're entitled to their own separate stream, I think. I don't think that's asking too much. So, what I want to do now is go over Karen Reed's new civil suit that she just filed against the Canton Police Department and the Massachusetts State Police. So stay with me and we'll get right into it. So, welcome back. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we knew that Proctor's phone extraction was going to be pretty, um, what can I say, wild. But I don't think in my wildest dreams I would have ever imagined it would be like this. I don't know what I was expecting. I knew that there would be some racial um, slurs and whatnot on there because, Rosemary Scapicchio has brought that to the court's attention numerous times, which is, and that's why she's fighting to have his whole extraction made available to any defense attorney basically that needs it for their case. Because Proctor was involved in a lot of cases. I mean, let's admit it. So, who knows? I mean, he's not above planting evidence, which he admits in a couple of these text messages to Sergeant Goode or ex Sergeant Goode. So, I mean, it's like, is it really that far of a reach to think that some or a lot of his arrests were done due to his racism? Maybe? I don't know. And it's not for me to decide. It's for the justice system to decide. But they should definitely have access to the tools that they need to prove their case. I mean, to defend their clients. And if Proctor arrested somebody illegally or set somebody up or planted something on somebody, then they have every right to his phone data, his phone extraction, to help clear their name. I mean, that's my personal feeling. I don't know if anybody agrees with that, but sure, not all of his arrests and not all the people that he's sent into prison are innocent. In fact, I'm sure that a very small percentage of them are. The thing is even if you know they're guilty, you gotta follow the rules. There are rules that police officers have to follow. There's policies, there's rules, there's steps that they have to take in order to arrest somebody and in order to get a conviction. And if you don't do it by the book, it gets thrown out. So, every one of his arrests could very well likely be a criminal. But were they guilty of the crime that Proctor arrested him for? That's the question. And it might be thanks to him that some of these criminals get out. How do you like them apples? Miles King was basically seen on video committing a murder, and he might walk because of Michael Proctor. He's got the right lawyer for it because Rosemary Scapiccio is a spitfire and she won't let up until what's right is what was wronged is righted, and she fights for her clients. Yeah, he's a piece of shit POS, but if he was arrested illegally and if they can prove it, then I don't know. I just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. It's just when you think that the shit from the Karen Read case can't get any deeper, another branch of the tree grows, sprouts, and it starts all over again. I don't think it's ever going to be over. I don't. Civil cases take years, first of all, so those won't be over for years, even though the judge, bless his heart, has every intention of keeping it moving. It's just the way civil cases go. But I feel bad for the taxpayers of Canton and Norfolk County because they shouldn't have to pay for this, and yet they're going to. Where do you think the money's going to come from that they have to pay Karen from? You think the townies, the select board, and those people are going to come up with the money out of their own pocket? No, they're going to tax the citizens of Norfolk County, and they are the ones that are going to pay Karen Read's what am I thinking of? Restitution. So if that's the case, then they should have had a say as to whether Karen Read was tried a second time. That's my feeling about it. But anyway, these text messages are definitely going to affect the O'Keefe's wrongful death suit, though, because they're pretty damning. Karen Read's been saying all along that she was framed, and Michael Proctor's admitting to wanting, or he says he's tempted to, and if you're even thinking about it, then most likely you've done it. He's attempting to plant cocaine on people, to do them harm, and it's just how somebody's brain can work that way. How do you hate somebody that you don't even know? How do you hate them so much that you want to cause them physical pain? He tells Sergeant Goode, don't rush to this MCA, which is a multiple casualty incident, or MCI. Multiple casualty incident because it was a multi-vehicle crash. And he tells Sergeant Goode, don't rush because I saw that one of the drivers is black, so let him die. You don't even know the guy. So then you got to stop and think, is this how he responds to all emergencies? Because we know he didn't even go to the scene of 34 Fairview, right? He never went there. How are you the lead detective in a homicide case and you don't even go to the crime scene? How is that? Especially when your officers don't take any kind of measurements. They don't take any kind of crime scene photos. Nothing. So how are you supposed to know what the crime scene looks like? There's no physical evidence, just, as far as picked photos and sketches go. You never went there. So how do you know what the crime scene looks like? How can you even begin to testify about that crime scene when you didn't go? There was no recording of it. I mean, it just blows me away. But yeah, so we're going to get into it. This is her lawsuit against MSP in Canton and the city of Canton for the Canton PD. And something else. Just 1 second. I want to be able to cross out some of these words. Okay. Because they're bad. They're bad, bad. Okay, so... Whoops, sorry. How do I get this closed now? How do I close this now? I guess I can't. As long as I'm using it, I guess I can't. Okay. So, Karen Reed plaintiff versus Massachusetts State Police and Town of Canton defendants. Introduction, and this is the complaint. 1. The not guilty verdict in Commonwealth v. Karen Reed on June 18th, 2025 did not merely end a wrongful prosecution. It shone an unflinching spotlight on something the Massachusetts State Police, from here on out MSP, and the Town of Canton Police Department, CPD, have spent years trying to conceal. An embedded culture of bigotry, misogyny, systemic failures, and institutional rot at the very core of both organizations. As a result of this entrenchment, Ms. Reed now files this action against MSP and CPD for their negligent hiring, training, and supervision of biased and corrupt police officers whose actions violated her constitutional rights and caused her immense harm. Number 2, at the heart of Ms. Reed's claims lies a distressing narrative, one not just about individual rights, but about fundamental principles upon which our society is built. Through this action, the MSP and CPD will now be forced to answer for their police officers' unlawful conduct against Ms. Reed that is set forth in detail below, but also for the insidious culture of bigotry and misogyny that fostered such unlawful conduct and has likely resulted in other unconstitutional criminal investigations in which countless unknown others have also suffered. Indeed, the MSP and CPD have avoided facing this very moment for years, but it's now time for the long-awaited transparency and accountability owed to the citizens of this Commonwealth. I agree. Number 3, former MSP Detective Michael Proctor and former, as of 2 days ago, CPD Sergeant Sean Goode are virulent bigots whose hatred for anyone and everyone different from themselves permeates their every action. They are not officers who occasionally voiced an offensive remark. They are men whose written and recorded communications, sent to one another and to a circle of like-minded friends over the course of a decade, established entrenched and unrepentant hatred for women, Black Americans, Asian Americans, Jews, Hispanics, Arabs, and gay people. Their unfitness for any position of public trust was not subtle. It was extensively documented and, as set forth below, knowable to MSP and CPD long before either agency assigned them to investigate and prosecute Ms. Reed. Proctor's and Goode's involvement at the outset of the investigation into the death of John J. O'Keefe III invariably and irredeemably contaminated it in every respect. Number 4, as depicted in thousands of written and audio audio messages. Wow. As depicted in thousands of written and audio messages that the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office has thus far hidden from public view, and far from the quote-unquote inclusive values that both organizations publicly claim to pursue, Proctor and Goode secretly and proudly wore badges of hate. Footnote 1. Multiple copies of a thumb drive containing a selection of audio recordings referenced herein are attached as Exhibit 1. And you notice they said multiple copies because they ain't taking the chance of you losing it. They know better. They learned. Indeed, bigotry guided their every act as law enforcement officers for years. But such conduct remained disguised by the uniforms they wore and obscured by the support and encouragement they received inside the walls of the very institutions designed to prevent such injustice and protect the public. Number 5. This lawyer writes very well. For the MSP and CPD, who hired, trained, supervised, and observed these two for years, Proctor's and Goode's hateful and despicable views were not only part of their own daily vernacular, but were woven through the fabric of their organization's culture and everyday conversations. After telling Goode about a multi-car accident in Canton, this is a text from Michael Proctor. Boy, they'd get right into it, right? Actually, take your time. I saw N-word was involved, so I wouldn't rush if you're working. Let them die. My new VP is a giant, malignant C-word. I pray to the heavens that some fucked up insect from the Amazon crawls up her vagina, hatches eggs, and the litter kills her by eating her from the inside out. Michael Proctor. Sean Goode, biggest C-word slut. Michael Proctor, referring to his then-girlfriend's anus. I can't even get fucking near that thing. I make every effort possible. I wait till she's asleep and I try to get at it. I try every effort possible. I try to get her hammered. I can't get anywhere near it. It's starting to piss me off. It's not cool. Sounds like a little bit of date grape, if you ask me. Michael Proctor went into Canton High this morning to get a transcript and saw more N-words in 10 minutes than the 4 years I spent there combined. Everywhere I looked, there was monkeys running around. Wanted to ask the woman in the guidance office where were all the white kids. Where the fuck did all these N-word come from? Sean Goode, eat a black dick. Now, these aren't necessarily in response to each other's. These are just, these aren't necessarily in response to each other. They're just giving you examples of some of their conversation or some of their text. Michael Proctor, that lady was an absolute C-rag N-word who had it in for me for some reason. Sean Goode, stupid, ugly G-word. Kook with the G. Michael Proctor, unfortunately, I know Randolph all too well. Place is a complete shithole, filled with N-words, no good N-words. Sean Goode, she's a Jew, so definitely puts out. Deport their asses. I don't care if they are here legally or what their excuse was. Fucking deport those sand N-word. That was Michael Proctor. Sean Goode. An Asian person, you know, rhymes with clink. Okay. Clink tard. Michael Proctor. Detroit should be destroyed okay, sorry. Start over. Detroit should be destroyed along with places like Flint, Michigan. They are breeding grounds for N-words to run wild. Sean. Jew fucker. Michael Proctor. It should be punch an N Word Day in Canton today out of retribution. Any shine you see, blast it in the face. Sean Goode. N-word. Michael Proctor. All gooks have shrubs between their legs. Michael Proctor. America sucks. Hitler was really on to something. Then the fucking U.S. had to step in and ruin it. Wow. Number 6. Indeed, throughout the course of their friendship, which dates back to high school, Goode and Proctor bonded over the warped prism through which they both view their surroundings and the individuals they encounter in their personal and professional lives. These distorted worldviews were shaped by unimaginable hatred and intolerance, through which they dehumanized others, often wishing violence or death on them, demeaning them, or even suggesting, quote-unquote, planting evidence on them to cause them harm. And we all know he hated Karen, right? Number 7. In written and recorded audio conversations beginning in 2013, the year MSP hired Proctor, and when Goode was already an officer with CPD, and for almost a decade later, these two law enforcement officers referred to community members whom they encountered as C-word, fat C-word, real C-words, N-words, dirty N-word, N-word for kids, stupid, ugly G-word, something that rhymes with clink, clink-tard, the derogatory term for a Hispanic, and Jew-chicks. Proctor and Goode believed these folks were polluting the neighborhoods in which they lived and worked, and where they eventually served. They did more than just subscribe to an act in conformance with their bigotry. They actually memorialized it in writing and voice messages to their like-minded friends. Not a few communications, thousands of them. Number 8. They discussed sharing private nude pictures of women and intentionally ejaculating on women while they slept. Few protected classes, community members, or public figures were spared. Goode wrote, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is a little cunt. The governor can suck my dick. New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft is a terrible cunty Jew. Anne Frank is a lying cunt. What does poor Anne Frank have to do with this? My God. Number 9. Put simply, they were then and are now completely and unquestionably unfit to hold positions of authority with MSP and CPD, much less to play important roles, or in Miss Reed's case, the primary role in homicide investigations. And despite that CPD had received, reviewed, verified, and analyzed these same messages nearly a year ago, Sergeant Goode remained employed with full rank as a sworn police officer by the CPD until 2 days ago. Yeah, he was on leave, but he was on paid leave. Number 10. On January 29, 2022, the MSP and CPD unleashed these two misogynist bigots on Miss Reed to work on the conflicted and corrupt quote-unquote investigation into the death of Mr. O'Keefe. It did not take long to trigger their hatred and target Miss Reed. Indeed, Proctor, Goode, other police officers, and their respective organizations understood the assignment once their fellow cops and friends, Brian and Nicole Albert, Matthew and Jennifer McCabe, and Brian Higgins, referred to as house defendants, in Miss Reed's pending federal court action, falsely reported that Mr. O'Keefe never went in the house. Even though his face was battered and bruised, he had dog bites and scratches on his arm, and he had a severe laceration on the back of his head that could only have come from a backward fall onto a rigid surface in the house rather than a flat front lawn. Law enforcement began immediately targeting and framing the female outsider, Miss Reed. 11. As the MSP's assigned lead investigator, and without knowing any more about Miss Reed than she was an outsider and a female, Proctor openly exposed his ossified prejudice when he described her to his group chat buddies as quote-unquote retarded, quote-unquote whack job cunt with quote-unquote no ass that leaks poo, whom they decided 16 hours into the investigation had zero chance of skating. Quote, she's fucked, end quote, he pronounced. Proctor intended to make the investigation cut and dry, so he and his close-knit circle of friends could pin it on the girl. 12. Immediately after Miss Reed's arrest, Goode made the same type of sexualized and dehumanizing comment about Miss Reed's medical conditions and physical appearance that he and Proctor peddled in the hallways of their organizations on a daily basis. Quote, Jesus, every girl will want a brain tumor, multiple sclerosis, colitis, if you can look like that in yoga pants after killing your boyfriend, end quote. Meanwhile, as Goode pondered Miss Reed in yoga pants, Proctor seized Miss Reed's phone and launched immediately into a search for naked pictures of her, only to report back to his colleagues and friends, disappointingly, quote, no nudes so far, end quote. But as he wrote to others as the investigation began, he hoped that she kills herself. 13. MSP and CPD's investigative approach was born out of Proctor's and Goode's perverse and depraved pattern of singling out and vilifying an outsider while protecting the quote-unquote blue line and their families. This was, of course, made more palatable by dehumanizing Miss Reed. Number 14. With the help of Goode and CPD, Proctor and his colleagues at MSP, including his direct supervisor, Yuri Buchanan, conducted a fundamentally conflicted and corrupt investigation where the goal was to pin it on the girl, and which included rampant violations of policies, procedures, and ethical rules. For example, and as described further below, despite the overwhelming evidence that Mr. O'Keefe was inside the house at 34 Fairview Road, they did not search the home for blood, fingerprints, or DNA evidence. The house was neither processed nor photographed by a forensic criminalist. Indeed, the investigators did not even walk into the crime scene house until a week later, and then only for a pro forma visit and brief quote-unquote interview of Nicole Albert. No effort was made to secure evidence from the Alberts' German Shepherd, even though Mr. O'Keefe's body was found in the front yard with fresh and obvious dog bites and scratches on his right arm. Nor did Proctor, Buchanan, or their MSP colleagues conduct any physical examination of the house defendants or attempt to seize their phones. The investigators did not attempt to secure the crime scene, document evidence, collect biological material, videotape or record interviews, take DNA control samples, geolocate digital devices at the scene, collect electronic devices, secure surveillance footage, create a crime scene log, or maintain even the most basic chains of custody in accordance with well-established investigative protocol. 15. Worse yet, with the help of others at both the MSP and CPD, Proctor and Buchanan manufactured evidence to ensure that Miss Reed was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death. Manufactured evidence to ensure that Miss Reed was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death, intentionally diverting attention away from Proctor's friends and fellow law enforcement officers. This included planting evidence at the scene, on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes, and on Miss Reed's vehicle to support the House defendant's false narrative that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle, notwithstanding that the investigators knew Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation and a dog attack. Paul O'Keefe, remember the day this happened, he said that it looked like John O'Keefe had been in a fight with Mike Tyson. So even he said it looked like he was in a fight. Number 16, among other failures, MSP's and CPD's delegation of power and authority to those as biased, corrupt, and bigoted as Proctor and Goode led to Miss Reed's being wrongly accused of homicide for 3.5 years and subjected to suspicion, to arrests, to prosecutions, and public trials and public condemnation. Indeed, with the exercise of ordinary care, both MSP and CPD would have known that Proctor, Goode, and others were unfit for service from the beginning. Number 17. Incredibly, Proctor himself acknowledged this fact in 2017 after 4 years on the job, telling his friends, quote, "No idea how I passed the background," end quote. Number 18. Now, after being twice acquitted of all charges relating to Mr. O'Keefe's death, Ms. Reed brings this action to recover for and address MSP's and CPD's inactions, and negligent failures to ensure that justice was sought and served in the aftermath of January 29th, 2022. Number 19. To be clear, however, this complaint transcends Miss Reed's personal and actionable grievance. Rather, it is a clarion call for reform and accountability. Cloaked with the emblem of authority, MSP and CPD and their employees, Proctor, Goode, and others, betrayed their sworn commitment to uphold the law. Their prejudices undermine our very democratic principles in wielding the great force of government over those who are vulnerable and powerless. MSP's and CPD's cultures of intolerance, hidden from the public but in plain sight within these organizations, cannot stand unchallenged. MSP and CPD are culpable and must confront the consequences of their institutional negligence. Roman numeral 2, parties. Number 20, plaintiff Karen Reed is an individual residing in North Dighton, Massachusetts. 21, defendant MSP is a Commonwealth department headquartered in Framingham, Massachusetts. 22, defendant Town of Canton through CPD is a municipality within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts with a principal place of business in Canton, Massachusetts. Roman numeral 3, jurisdiction. 23, the court has subject matter jurisdiction over this case pursuant to MGL 212 and cites the laws. 24, the court has personal jurisdiction. Tongue-tied. The court has personal jurisdiction over MSP in this town and the town because each is headquartered and functions exclusively within Massachusetts. Venue is proper in this county pursuant to, and it gives cites the law, because the plaintiff resides in Dighton. Roman numeral 4, incorporated facts. 26, Reed incorporates by reference each of the facts alleged in paragraphs 28 through 108 of the amended complaint filed in Reed v. Proctor, and attached hereto as Exhibit 2, as if each were fully stated and alleged here. Footnote 2. Originally, Miss Reed attempted to file all of her affirmative claims against all parties, including the Town of Canton and Massachusetts State Police, in the one action she filed in Bristol County Superior Court on November 17th, 2025. That pleading contains all of the alleged facts sufficient to establish all claims against all parties. However, the Town of Canton Police Department and Massachusetts State Police refused to waive the 6-month presentment period. And by the time the presentment period expired, the House defendants had removed Miss Reed's Superior Court complaint to federal court, where it is now pending. Because the Massachusetts State Police enjoys immunity from federal court jurisdiction, Miss Reed cannot add these claims to the pending federal court action. Therefore, although Miss Reed now brings this action separately in Bristol County Superior Court, relying on many of the same factual allegations already asserted, rather than set forth those same facts again here, Miss Reed simply refers to and incorporates them by reference. I bet you they're kicking themselves now for waiting for that 6 months, because they didn't have all this, all of Proctor. They didn't have Proctor's phone extraction yet, but they did after 6 months. Wow. Just wow. 27. Reed alleges the following additional facts relating to Proctor, MSP, Goode, and CPD. Roman numeral 5. Additional facts. Proctor's and Goode's ingrained misogyny, racism, homophobia, anti-Semitism, and other biases. 28. By January 29, 2022, Proctor and Goode, both inveterate bigots, had long-standing and deeply held biases against women, as well as almost every other protected class of people other than white, male, non-Jewish police officers. Proctor's and Goode's clear willingness and tendency to dehumanize, judge, and evaluate people and circumstances based on their hatred and biases significantly contributed to their willingness to embrace the narrative provided by the House defendants and target Miss Reed, leading to the destruction of her career, her financial stability, and her freedom, and her very freedom, as well as the emotional and physical harm caused by 2 years long prosecutions and trials for crimes she did not commit. 29. Proctor's and Goode's reservoir of vituperation, fed by their staggering prejudices and the extent to which they were willing to pass judgment on others based solely on gender, race, religion, or sexual orientation, are apparent from each of their contributions to the cesspool of abject hatred reflected in their group chats and email chains with their friends beginning in 2013. Below is a selection of those messages. Messages sent by Proctor. Number 30. Even during MSP's hiring process, Michael Proctor could not contain his bigoted views. 31. On February 26, 2013, Proctor wrote to his friends, "Hey, dickheads, just wanted to give you two a heads up that you guys may get a call from a state trooper named Scott Cooper who is doing my background check. Don't know I think that's supposed to say how far back they are going to go with this stuff, but I didn't want to have this guy catch you off guard." 32. Proctor's friend responded, "No problem, but what are we supposed to say? Last time the BPD, Boston Police Department lady, was grilling me for exact dates as to when and how long you lived in Brighton, how we paid rent, to who, etc. Anything specific we should be aware of?" Number 33. Proctor responded, "That lady was an absolute cunt, rag, N-word who had it in for Bear," referring to himself in the third person by his nickname Bear in his friend chat group. "Talked to this guy for a half hour today, and I would be shocked if he pulled the same shit as her just from how she acted with me on the phone." Number 34. Apparently, MSP did not, quote, pull the same shit, end quote, as the BPD, who did not hire him during these interviews, because MSP hired Proctor. It hired him at the time Proctor was constantly sharing countless messages with his friends and other law enforcement officers that illustrate the extreme and aggressive prejudices and biases he held against women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, and others. Proctor's views even polluted his thinking about MSP's hierarchy and leadership. If that person is black, they will probably make him next colonel of the state police, end quote. 35. Much of Proctor's aggression and hatred, however, was directed at women. In fact, from the time of his hire at MSP through the time he began investigating Miss Reed, Proctor shared countless messages with his friends about his perspectives on women. A. Discussing a sexual partner not wanting to be ejaculated on. Quote, "That's when you whack off on her when she's asleep. Then tell her one way or another you will spray a rope on her." B. Fat twat. C. Giant malignant cunt. I pray to the heavens that some fucked up insect from the Amazon crawls up her vagina, hatches eggs, and the litter kills her by eating her from the inside out. Micromanage isn't even the word for this twat bag. I want to shove a crowbar up her asshole and let a rat crawl in there. Who thinks of stuff like this? It's hard to even read. D. That will turn into me jacking off on her as she sleeps. E. Referring to his then girlfriend Zanus. I can't even get fucking near that thing. I make every effort possible. I wait till she's asleep and I try to get at it. I try every effort possible. I try to get her hammered. I can't get anywhere near it. It's starting to piss me off. It's not cool. Can you say grape? She may be your girlfriend, but she still has to consent. F. Thick pigs. G. Discussing specific sexual acts and the need to potentially get at it while she's asleep. H. Discussing needing a roofie or something to find a sexual partner. I. Ain't gonna happen. She will pass out at 9 and I will stay up until midnight drinking and watching movies. I could swoop in for the kill when she's asleep, though. J. Pigs I have stuffed. K. Part of like jacking off is to do it on an absolute pig, not some Brazilian smoke show top 12 model. You want a filthy pig that you just do dirty things to. Give me some thick girls with some meat who you can just shit on. L. Referring to an overweight woman as a disgrace. M. Absolute pig. And N. A cunt. 36. During the same time frame, Proctor also prolifically messaged his friends about his similar hatred of Black, Asian, Hispanic, Arab, and Jewish people. After observing a multi-car accident and initially informing Goode, in case he was on duty, Proctor followed up, quote, actually take your time. I saw a N-word was involved, so I wouldn't rush if you're working. Let them die. B. Literally hate 99% of the people I meet, see, and deal with. Dudes went into Canton High this morning to get a transcript and saw more N-words in 10 minutes than 4 years I spent there combined. Everywhere I looked, there was monkeys running around. Wanted to ask the woman in the guidance office where were all the white kids? Where the fuck did all these N-words come from? C. Discussing a college football game. You notice that N-word headband from A&M said something like cash me out. Would have been nice if they were still our slaves. Then I wouldn't have to go pick up Bertucci's. Just say, hey, N-word, go fetch Bear his wings and pizza. Jesus, that place was a dump. Smelled like N-words and cigarettes. E. Another plane was brought back to the gate because of 2 sand N-words speaking Arabic, and people on the plane were freaked out and had them kicked off. F. If an American pulled some terrorist act in a Middle Eastern country, they would have their heads chopped off in the middle of the closest major city for all the citizens to see and cheer on. Instead, this person will get lethal injection in a secluded federal prison and be viewed as a hero to all the sand N-words around the world. G. Word up, dudes. Been just crushing business shit today. Actually, not really. Just been dipping and trying to make sense of what the goop next to me is saying. H. Deport their asses. I don't care if they are here legally or what their excuse was. Fucking deport those sand N-word. The NBA is god awful and is a fucking joke. These super teams and the refs are ruining the league. Plus, it's all N-words. J. All I have to say about Hernandez is stupid and Hispanic. Another word for Hispanic. Rhymes with tick. Okay, this is how fucking stupid she is. We got a new intern. Kid is a complete lemon dick. who has been there 1 week. She drags him into her office and asks him for advice on how to bring the group closer together. There are 4 people who the rest of us hate, and it's obvious 3 out of 4 are Asian. Surprise, surprise. Wouldn't mind being a N-word for a day. Just pop open a fire hydrant and suck down a few 40 ounces while listening to some Naughty by Nature. M. N-word cops. N. Too many Jews in Sharon. O. America sucks. Hitler was really onto something, then the fucking U.S. had to step in and ruin it. P. Discussing a pornographic movie called Blackjack City and was nothing but fat N-words getting pounded out with huge runny flapjack tits. Q. Detroit should be destroyed along with places like Flint, Michigan. They are breeding grounds for N-words to run wild. R. Obviously, I can't watch a black dude fuck a white chick. S. Randolph is filled with N-words and no good N-word. T. Sand N-word. U. Gook. V. N-word movie. W. I wouldn't rush. I heard a N-word was involved. X. We could use them N-words as dartboards. Y. N-word lover. Z. It should be punch a N-word day in Canton today out for retribution. Any shine you see, blast it in the face. Recommending a movie theater because there are no N-words. Discussing his first arrest and saying it was a fucking immigrant who is going back to Guatemala. All gooks have shrubs between their legs. Noodle N-word. I haven't shot anyone, but I did pull a N-word over today for tossing a cigarette out the window. Asshole N-word. Ruined the NBA. Eat a dick, Ghana. Let's enslave those N-words. My car needs cleaning. I would rather deal with the retards at Starbucks than the retard Brazilians at Dunks. Asks for everyone's favorite race to bang. Middle Eastern would be asinine. Sand N-word. Discussing Jewish people from Sharon and stating we really should keep them in a concentration camp. This guy truly has no moral compass. I went to this cobbler to have, I think it's supposed to be my asshole stretch so I could fit black hog in it, and asked if they do boots too. I don't know what that means. Clink-eyed. So, something that rhymes with clink. In addition to these horrific statements indicating the extent to which he believed those with backgrounds and characteristics similar to him, white male, were superior to others, women and non-white, Proctor also wasn't shy about his other proclivities that made him patently unfit for service, including that more than once Proctor discussed planting coke on people and shoving a nightstick up someone's ass. 38. Proctor recognized his inadequacy in 2017, writing that he had no idea how he passed the background. Although he did explain that MSP detective units do the background checks for applicants. They allowed a girl into the next academy who admitted to using cocaine and ecstasy and recently used those drugs. That would make me feel safe if I lived there. Messages sent by Goode. 39. CPD Sergeant Goode was no more discreet about his own biased and deranged views. Like Proctor, and while a CPD officer, Goode regularly referred to and discussed women in venomous ways. Cunt. Fat cunt. A real cunt. Fucking C word. I'm getting tired of saying that. The biggest C word. Slut. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu is a little C word. And wait, she's sending you nudes? Send them. If Lisa would let me see her cans and actually take a photo of them, I would send them. We are family here. He also displayed the same racial and religious supremacist viewpoints as Proctor, which, like his misogyny, impacted how he viewed the members of the public he encountered on a regular basis as a police officer. Among others, Goode sent these messages while he was a CPD officer, referring to Robert Kraft as a terrible C-word Jew, N-word, can't deal with the gooks, gook land, Jews controlled the election, she's a Jew, so she definitely puts out, the Jew chick, stupid ugly gook, Jew fucker, eat a black dick, eat an Asian dick, clink, very Jewy, gook, clink tard, noisy little Jew dweeb. Is that a Jew or a black? I don't know what that means. Never understood whiny Jew humor. Jew sympathizers, Anne Frank's a lying cunt. And then it's like yikes with a K. I wonder how Yuri Buchanan felt about this, because Yuri Buchanan is Ukrainian. Yeah. How do you feel about Hitler? Now, how are the blacks down there? Very blacky? 42. Goode also shared similar disdain for homosexual members of the community in Canton and elsewhere, referring to them repeatedly as the F word, homos, and cocksuckers. Like Proctor, Goode exhibited more in these messages than just his bias and hate. He also showed that he lacks the basic discretion and neutrality required of a police officer deputized to protect and serve all members of the community, regardless of skin color and ethnicity, gender, religious beliefs, and/or sexual orientation. Just 1 second, I'm going to get a drink. As just one example, in 2022, and as an 18-year veteran of CPD, Goode shared his views in writing on Sandra Birchmore, a young woman who tragically died the year before in Canton and whose death was initially ruled suicide until federal authorities discovered that multiple officers from neighboring town Stoughton's police department had been essaying Miss Birchmore when she was a minor, since she was a minor. After federal authorities investigated, they charged a former Stoughton police officer with her murder, and her death is now classified as a homicide at the federal level. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office early this year changed her death from suicide to undetermined. Against this backdrop, Goode told his friends that chick was borderline retarded. And the Norfolk County District Attorney has yet to bring state charges against ex-Stoughton police officer Farwell. He just won't do it. 45. Goode also helped his friends avoid repercussions for what appears to have been their regular practice of driving drunk. Quote, sobriety checkpoint on 138 by the trail side tonight. Please stay away tonight. Can't help you if you get caught. Too many troopers and Milton PD. Keep this info between us, end quote. He apparently relished his ability to use his institutional power, authority, and access to illegally obtain information about women he encountered in his daily life, writing in 2015, quote, "Ha ha, can't wait to look this cunt up tonight at work," end quote. MSP and CPD knew or should have known about Proctor's and Goode's bigotry. 47. Proctor's and Goode's biases, bigotry, and personal histories were known or should have been known to MSP and CPD when they hired, trained, promoted, and supervised them. Not only were the MSP and CPD on notice of Proctor's and Goode's troubling views and intolerant attitude towards various members of the community, they were sworn to protect and serve during the underlying investigation into Mr. O'Keefe's death. But Proctor's supervisors knew Proctor had a close relationship with the Alberts and that Proctor made no secret of his bias against Miss Reed, demonstrating a clear prejudice against her from the outset. For its part, CPD refuses to acknowledge its role in this debacle of an investigation or recognize the significant flaws in its hiring, training, and supervising practices. Illustrated by Goode's continued role as a sergeant for the CPD until 2 days ago, when, upon information and belief, CPD was informed of MSP's counsel that this complaint would soon be filed. Helpful right to the end, CPD then permitted Goode to resign 2 days before the filing of this complaint rather than fire him, and thus saving him from the reputational and financial implications of being terminated for cause. As for the MSP, both before and during the Proctor-led investigation, his immediate supervisor, Buchanan, provided his annual employment reviews. True to form, despite knowing firsthand the extent of Proctor's unlawful conduct, bias, and bigotry, Buchanan repeatedly and falsely wrote that Proctor has handled himself with the utmost professionalism and with strict integrity, and confirmed that they had successfully discussed MSP's policies concerning anti-harassment / sexual harassment and discrimination and diversity, among others. Well, why would you feel like you have to single those out for him? Other times, the MSP simply looked the other way. For example, in February 2024, 4 months before Miss Reed's first trial, the MSP was aware they had a problem specifically related to Miss Reed's case. The Department of Justice had begun investigating the investigators, and on February 1, questioned Proctor in a grand jury proceeding about text messages he wrote in which he called Miss Reed a cunt, among other bigoted comments the Department of Justice had found. That's in the 3,000 binder released by the feds, remember, before the trial started. Proctor was also questioned about his texts at 11 p.m. on January 29, 2022, that House Defendant Brian Albert would escape scrutiny in the investigation because, quote, he's a Boston cop too, end quote. Further, Proctor was confronted at this grand jury about texts from Julie Albert to his sister, Courtney Proctor, asking to give Proctor a gift for some implied favor he did for the Alberts during their interviews for the case. On February 4, 2024, Proctor had a meeting and told the highest level of leadership at the MSP, Colonel John E. Mon, who recently retired, Lieutenant Brian Connors, recently retired, and Major Leonard Coppenrath, active, about his testimony to the Department of Justice, including his text messages. Did he, though? You think he did? They did not terminate him, did not immediately ask for his phone, and did not immediately investigate his bigotry. No, they had him sign a non-disclosure. They knew it existed and where to find it, but they didn't want to, at least until Miss Reed's trial was over. Indeed, they tried to hide it from Miss Reed and the public, despite initiating an internal affairs investigation in early March 2024, before the jury in Miss Reed's first criminal trial was even impaneled. It was not until Miss Reed's defense counsel found out about these messages and then used them during the public trial that MSP concluded it couldn't ignore this any longer. MSP proceeded to falsely claim that it only became aware of the messages during the defense's cross-examination and finally terminated Proctor. While Internal Affairs, MSP's Office of Professional Integrity and Accountability launched a probe led by Detective Lieutenant Kevin Dwyer to investigate Proctor's lewd text messages regarding Miss Reed, the MSP inexplicably assigned two non-OPIA troopers, Major Benson and Captain Barrios, to perform cursory and brief interviews of the Proctors and Alberts, inquiring about their personal relationships with one another. The Proctors and Alberts were not confronted with any texts or social media posts depicting their decades-long family-like bond. No outside witnesses were interviewed, no cell phones were seized, and no evidence was presented. 53. It was not just reasonably foreseeable, but nearly certain that MSP's and CPD's failure to use ordinary care in selecting to whom they would impart power would result in members of the public being targeted and severely impacted by officers and troopers' elemental shortcomings. Put differently, the biased and corrupt investigation that harmed Miss Reed was the natural consequence of MSP and CPD hiring and promoting biased and corrupt law enforcement officers. In line with their barely concealed willingness to dehumanize and condemn people, coupled with their readiness to ignore or overlook objective evidence, Proctor and Goode began the investigation against the female outsider with bias and prejudice fueled by their bigotry. After Proctor and Goode launched the biased and corrupt investigation, other police officers followed suit and caused harm to Miss Reed. After the start of the investigation, others in MSP and CPD also contributed to the unlawful investigation that stripped Miss Reed of her constitutional rights. MSP and CPD are liable for the negligent hiring, training, and supervision of these other officers whose wrongful acts also contributed to the harm suffered by Miss Reed. Specifically, as described in the amended complaint Exhibit 1 in the federal court, action against Proctor, Buchanan, Brian Tolley, and the House defendants that are specifically incorporated herein, MSP's and CPD's employees' wrongful acts include, but are not limited to, A. They were propelled by the House defendants' false statements, including that Mr. O'Keefe never went in the house. B. They failed to investigate any theory other than seeking to singularly focus on Miss Reed to the exclusion of all other available evidence. C. They ignored that Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack, and that no injuries were consistent with a vehicle strike. D. They intentionally sidestepped or wholly ignored fundamental investigatory procedures. E. They disregarded and failed to obtain pertinent interviews and other critical evidence from the House defendants that cannot now be recovered or recreated. F. Through Proctor, they secretly communicated with the Alberts on Proctor's personal phone, deliberately back-channeling those communications to circumvent his state-issued device, and used Proctor's sister as a surrogate. G. They manufactured evidence to ensure that Miss Reed, not their friends and fellow law enforcement officers, was blamed for Mr. O'Keefe's death, including planting evidence at the scene, on Mr. O'Keefe's clothes, and on Miss Reed's vehicle to support the false narrative that Miss Reed struck Mr. O'Keefe with her vehicle, even though they knew Mr. O'Keefe's injuries were inconsistent with a motor vehicle strike and consistent with a physical altercation and dog attack. And H. They expressly encouraged flagrant abuses of power. Okay, I need to take a little break for a minute, so let's look at something, okay? I want to see if the Canton Police Chief or MSP put out a statement today. Here we go. 19 minutes ago by Boston 25 News. Okay, so what? Does it get any bigger? Okay, wait a minute. Why isn't it so small? Huh. Just 1 second. Why is it so small? Um, okay, well, it's not very big, so bear with me.
And her legal team have filed the lawsuit against the Massachusetts State Police and the Canton Police Department, calling investigation into her and the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, is biased and corrupt. Reed sued calling out 2 officers in particular, State Trooper Michael Proctor and Canton cop Sean Goode, as, quote, 2 misogynist bigots. The suit did not list what type of financial damages Reed is looking for. Joining us this morning to add some perspective to this lawsuit is Boston attorney and advocate Margot Lindauer. And Margot, good to see you this morning. First, are you surprised at all that Reed has filed the lawsuit?
Excuse me, what?
Are you surprised that Reed has filed the lawsuit?
Absolutely not. No, she's had a vigorous defense from the beginning, and this is something that she set the stage for during her trial when the initial Proctors from the initial text messages from Proctor were released.
So at the center of this lawsuit, again, text messages from both Proctor and Goode, not related to the Karen Reed case. Many of them are quite offensive. Let me just give you a couple of examples of what we pulled here. And Proctor wrote, quote, "America sucks. Hitler was really onto something. Then expletive U.S. had to step in and ruin it," end quote. And in another instance, after telling Goode about a crash in Canton, Proctor allegedly wrote, quote, "Actually, take your time. I saw a racial slur was involved. So I wouldn't rush if you're working. Let them die," end quote. How do you react when you see those?
Well, as a human and just a citizen of Massachusetts, I'm really offended and confused, right? That these racist, misogynist, anti-Semitic statements were just being thrown around in regular conversation. These are people, police officers, who we entrust with our safety, with everyone's safety. And the fact that in these texts, it's so clear that this person was not treating everyone the same, and in fact had some deep hatred for certain people in this state is deeply concerning.
So Reed's attorneys, with these text messages from both of these people involved here, Proctor and Goode, they're trying to establish what?
They're trying to establish that these 2 individuals were not credible, were not sufficiently trained or professional or able to do their jobs in the state police or in the Canton Police Department. So there's this real question about what is the public's opinion and what is going to happen in the legal case. Because, Jean, you're right. These texts are from the past. They're not from the Karen Reed case. We've already heard the Proctor text or read the Proctor text that came out during the investigation, which were also quite offensive about Karen Reed's body and her medical condition. But these are texts from before. So the question is whether the judge is going to
just get over
take it into consideration
racism.
that these were done so far in the past, and whether they will influence the judge's decision about the credibility of their professionalism going forward.
That's pretty much what Proctor's attorney responded to the text, saying that, you know, these here were sent long before John O'Keefe died, and as he said, quote, had no bearing whatsoever on the investigation of Karen Reed. So the question is, are those texts fair game, and is that going to be for the judge to decide ultimately? And depending on that ruling, will that determine whether or not this case goes forward or goes deeper than just initially being filed?
Exactly. And Jean, as you know, there's the court of public opinion and there's the court. And the question is, what is the public's awareness now of how objectively terrible these texts were, and that the Canton police knew about it and the Massachusetts State Police knew about it for a while, right? And so they recently came out to the public this week, but they have been known to the police departments for a long time. And what does that do to the public's trust in those institutions?
So this is a civil case, not a criminal one. Burden of proof different, correct?
Correct. Absolutely. It's not beyond a reasonable doubt. But there have been always these two cases going on with the Karen Reed case specifically. It's what does the public know and what the public is doing in terms of putting pressure on the court system, and what is the court doing with some things that potentially may not have any specific bearing on this case, being the text from 10 years ago.
Well, it's going to play out for a long time to come for sure. Margot Lindahl, appreciate your perspective this morning. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.
Wow. Okay, so let's read this article. I'm not finding a statement by the police captain or chief or whatever, Noble, I think his name is.
Beautiful.
I don't know. Woo! I mean, he made a short statement last night, I think, but it wasn't very impressive. Okay, let's read this article real fast. Canton, Massachusetts. The town of Canton issued a lengthy statement on Friday. Nope, they did issue a statement. On Friday, after its police department, along with the Massachusetts State Police, was named in a new lawsuit filed by Karen Reed that alleges a system-wide failure of law enforcement led to a wrongful prosecution over 3 years. The 87-page lawsuit filed Thursday alleges negligent civil conspiracy and misconduct tied to the investigation into the death of Reed's Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. Her attorneys claim investigators deliberately focused on Reed from the start while ignoring other possible suspects in a quote-unquote biased and predetermined case against her. Quote, this case is about two institutions, the MSP and the CPD, and a culture of bias and corruption that they built, tolerated, and hid from the public for years. End quote, Reed's attorneys said in a statement. The civil suit specifically names fired Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael Proctor and newly resigned CPD Sergeant Sean Goode, accusing both men of misconduct and describing them as, quote, misogynist bigots, end quote. Michael Proctor and Sean Goode did not slip through the cracks. They are emblematic of the failure to responsibly exercise the trust and faith the public puts in these institutions, Reed's attorneys say. Proctor and Goode were unfit for positions of public trust, and yet they were handed badges, promotions, and ultimately control of homicide investigations, despite harboring deep-seated and abhorrent anti-woman, racist, anti-Semitic, and homophobic ideologies for more than a decade. At the center of the suit is a series of offensive text messages exchanged between Proctor and Goode that investigators obtained. Some of those messages, which are not directly tied to the Reed case, include racist, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic language. In one exchange, Proctor allegedly made hateful remarks, while in another he referenced delay in response to an incident involving a racial slur. Goode, who responded to the scene of O'Keefe's death, submitted his resignation from the Canton Police Department this week. He also testified during Reed's first trial. He was suspended from the department in October of 2025 and placed on leave shortly after investigators uncovered the additional troubling text messages on Proctor's phone. The internal affairs investigation involving Sergeant Sean Goode was initiated after the town became aware of inappropriate text messages through the DA's office on October 24, 2025. Upon learning of the messages, the town placed Sergeant Goode on administrative leave, opened an internal affairs investigation, and retained an outside investigator, the town of Canton said in a statement. The town of Canton also called the messages revealed in Reed's lawsuit abhorrent, deeply offensive, and hateful. The town's full statement reads as follows, quote, The internal affairs investigation involving Sergeant Sean Goode was initiated after the town became aware of inappropriate text messages through the DA's office on October 24, 2025. Upon learning of the messages, the town placed Sergeant Goode on an administrative leave, opened an internal affairs investigation, and retained an outside investigator. However, the town did not and still does not possess the messages themselves. The town's outside investigator was granted access to the messages in December 2025, subject to a court-issued protective order that strictly restricted dissemination of the messages. The outside investigator was required to review more than 200,000 voice notes and text messages dating back to 2013. As part of the internal affairs process, Sergeant Goode's union counsel was also permitted to review the messages in full. The scope of that review, combined with the limitations imposed by the protective order, made the process time-intensive. Sergeant Goode was subsequently scheduled for an IA interview, but refused to appear. Can you do that? Wouldn't that be automatic termination if you refuse to go to the IA interview? The town then initiated termination proceedings and placed the appointment of a hearing officer on the June 2, 2026 Select Board meeting agenda. However, Sergeant Goode tendered his resignation on May 29, 2026, effective June 2, before those proceedings could be completed. Under Massachusetts civil service law, the town was required to conduct a full adjudicatory hearing before terminating Sergeant Goode. His resignation occurred before that hearing could take place. The internal affairs report will be released when finalized and will be a public record subject to legally required redactions. The report will also be provided to the Peace Officer Standards and Training, the Post Commission. Claims that the town knowingly ignored misconduct or failed to take these allegations seriously are inconsistent with the actions taken. Upon learning of the allegations, the town promptly removed Sergeant Goode from the workplace, retained an independent investigator, and pursued appropriate personnel action based on the information available throughout the investigative process. The messages are abhorrent, deeply offensive, hateful, and do not reflect the values of the Canton Police Department or its members. The men and women of the Canton Police Department are entrusted with serving every member of the community fairly, professionally, and with respect. Preserving that trust requires accountability, transparency, and adherence to the highest standards of public service. The town of Canton wants the community to know that allegations involving conduct that calls into question the professionalism, integrity, or impartiality of a police officer are taken seriously and addressed in accordance with applicable law and post requirements. Proctor, who served as the lead investigator in the Reed murder case, was fired from his role within the state police in March of 2025. He was relieved of his duty without pay after a mistrial was declared in Reed's first trial, and his last day with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office followed soon thereafter. Proctor came under fire for a series of disparaging texts he sent about Reed, which he read aloud in court during her first trial. Proctor admitted on the stand that the texts were quote-unquote unprofessional. He called Reed things like a whack job and other derogatory words. He also talked about her medical issues and wrote, "No nudes so far," while going through her phone. Reed, 46, was previously charged with second-degree murder after prosecutors alleged she backed over O'Keefe with her SUV and left him for dead during a snowstorm in Canton in January 2022. She was ultimately acquitted in June of 2025 after a mistrial was declared in her first trial the year prior. In a statement, Massachusetts State Police Colonel Jeffrey Noble called the lawsuit disturbing, noting the racist, sexist, and abhorrent comments absolutely do not reflect the values of the MSP. Reed currently faces a wrongful death civil suit filed by John O'Keefe's family. She has also filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against multiple people who testified against her in her two murder trials. Oh, huh. me see. Okay, well, let's get back to where we were. Okay, armed with the fruits of this fundamentally flawed and biased investigation, the Norfolk District Attorney's Office proceeded to prosecute Miss Reed for murder, resulting in 2 juries rejecting the Commonwealth's charges and Miss Reed losing her career, home, car, livelihood, and reputation. As Greg Connor, a 25-year veteran prosecutor in that office who is now seeking the role of district attorney, recently said of the Commonwealth's murder charge, quote, "The reach exceeded the grasp," end quote. And I don't think there was another DA office in Massachusetts that wanted to prosecute Karen Reed. Wow. Roman numeral 6, counts. Okay, and this goes through the different counts. And I'm sure that they're the same for both Massachusetts State Police and Canton. Okay. Okay, we'll just go through them, I guess. Miss Reed repeats and realleges each preceding paragraph, including those paragraphs incorporated by reference in Exhibit 1, as if fully stated here. MSP serves as the statewide law enforcement agency and maintains investigative, tactical, and support units throughout the Commonwealth. MSP owed a duty of care to members of the public within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. MSP had a duty to exercise reasonable care to ensure that MSP troopers do not cause foreseeable harm to a foreseeable class of plaintiffs, including but not limited to members of the public with whom they interact in the course of their duties. That duty includes, without limitation, the duty to adequately hire, train, supervise, and retain to avoid foreseeable harm to members of the public with whom troopers interact. In particular, the officers that MSP hires, trains, supervises, promotes, and retains are required to comply with the law as well adhere to a written code of ethics established and promulgated by MSP that expressly includes, inter alia, the duty to respect the diversity of and be sensitive to all people, accept responsibility to the public by being punctual in our engagements and expeditious in the performance of duty, regard the office as a public trust, and in the discharge of its duties be mindful of our primary obligations to serve the public efficiently and effectively, administer the law in a just, impartial, and in reasonable manner, affording the same reasonable treatment to all cases, recognizing the limitations of its authority, and at no time using the power of its office for personal advantage, be true to its obligations as custodians of public property, never diminishing its integrity or limiting its effectiveness by accepting gratuities or favors from persons, businesses, corporations, or other entities, cooperate fully with other public officials to assure the safety and general welfare of the public, refrain from allowing jealousies or personal differences to influence its ability to cooperate with others in its official business, add to its effectiveness by enhanced training, diligent study, and sincere attention to self-improvement, including physical readiness, welcoming the opportunity to disseminate practical and useful information relating to matters of the public's safety and welfare, bearing faithful allegiance to the government and be loyal to the law enforcement profession, accept as an obligation its responsibility to support the constitutions of the United States and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and fervently seek out and report the truth. It makes me think of that YouTube channel, Fervent. Sorry. When hiring individuals to be troopers and interact with the public, MSP had a duty to use reasonable care to hire individuals that would not endanger or cause harm to the public, but rather to act in accordance with the law and its express code of ethics. MSP also had a duty to exercise reasonable care to ensure that its employees did not cause foreseeable harm to a foreseeable class of plaintiffs, including by adequately supervising and training them. Not only are these duties and responsibilities established by law, but MSP has written policies and procedures mandating that members of MSP maintain a level of conduct in their personal and business affairs which is in keeping with the highest standards of the law enforcement profession, including not participating in any act which impairs their ability to perform as members of MSP or causes MSP to be brought into disrepute or causes foreseeable harm to the public. You mean like going down to the Cape to work on a cold case and getting drunk and driving home, and then forgetting your police issued gun and badge in Proctor's car? That, you mean something like that? MSP breached its duties by, among other things, hiring and retaining Proctor when it either knew or should have known that he was unfit to serve as a trooper because of his virulent and deep-seated biases, failing to adequately train and supervise Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully as described above, including but not limited to failing to adequately train and evaluate them in the following areas, the importance of which it knew or should have known, acting upon bigoted views, potential bias and conflicted investigations, proper investigatory procedure, including the proper scope and timing of an investigation, how to appropriately handle suspects and potential suspects, conducting appropriate witness interviews, securing evidence in crime scenes, establishing chains of custody, and communicating properly with witnesses, suspects, and third parties, and prohibitions on planting, manufacturing, tampering with, or manipulating evidence, perjury, and falsifying documents. Every single thing listed there was an issue with during Karen Reed's trials. Allowing Proctor to continue to investigate even though he had personal relationships with witnesses and potential suspects in the murder, and which led to unlawful and favorable treatment of potential suspects. allowing Proctor to continue to investigate even though he had exhibited an extreme and personal negative bias towards Karen Reed. Allowing Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully to continue to investigate even though they had violated rules, policies, and procedures in all manners of the investigation. I'm waiting for something to happen to Tully. I mean, yeah, he retired, but he had his hand in every aspect of this and Turtle Boy's case. You know? I mean, he wanted Turtle Boy bad. Where was I? Allowing Proctor and Buchanan to plant, fabricate, and manipulate evidence, falsify documents, and commit perjury. Allowing and neglecting to stop Proctor's, Buchanan's, and Tully's failures to secure evidence and the crime scene, obtain evidence, timely and appropriately interview suspects, and investigate the Alberts, McCabe's, or Higgins. And by continuing to employ Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully, MSP knew or should have known that each had engaged in misconduct during the performance of their employment, including but not limited to: upon information and belief in prior investigations, Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully repeatedly failed to follow rules, regulations, policies, and procedures, and upon information and belief in prior investigations, Proctor, Buchanan, and Tully each have exhibited a pattern of misconduct, including misogynist conduct. MSP's failures caused harm to Miss Reed. Specifically, Miss Reed was wrongfully investigated and prosecuted for Mr. O'Keefe's death, resulting in the loss of employment, reputational damages, and millions of dollars of legal expenses, as well as severe emotional distress and injury. Among other things, Miss Reed has lost her career, her home, her car, her reputation. She lost her freedom of movement for years and was forced to endure 2 criminal trials before finally being acquitted of any crime relating to Mr. O'Keefe's death. This also caused severe emotional and physical damage to Miss Reed. Miss Reed presented her claim in writing to MSP pursuant to, and it gives the statutes, on November 21, 25. MSP explicitly denied Miss Reed's claim on April 14, 2026. Miss Reed is entitled to damages for MSP's negligence in an amount to be determined at trial. And negligence, count 2 negligence against Town of Canton through Canton Police Department. Okay. And it basically says the same thing that the previous one said. Exactly. Pretty much. Okay, there are some differences, so let's go through them. Failing to properly, okay, it says the same thing about Goode as it did Proctor. Failing to properly supervise and train Sergeant Michael Lank in his failure to inspect or secure 34 Fairview Road, secure the scene where Mr. O'Keefe's body was found, inspect the house defendant's bodies for evidence of a fight, or ask to search the house defendant's phones, all on the morning of January 29, 2022. Failing to preserve, protect, and secure various surveillance video inside and outside the Sally Port, including but not limited to setting the auto-delete function on such videos to 30 days and not preserving these particular videos for a longer period of time. Attempting to obfuscate and hide from Miss Reed's criminal defense team surveillance video footage from inside the police station and outside in the parking lot on relevant days. failing to supervise the relationship between Proctor and Kevin Albert, including permitting backdoor communications involving the O'Keefe investigation and other social activities during the investigation, including drinking and driving together on Cape Cod. Providing Brian Higgins with access to the CPD station without supervision, and once CPD knew Higgins used the CPD station in the middle of the night, immediately following the house party on the night of Mr. O'Keefe's death, failing to investigate and report that fact to the MSP. Yeah, why were you there? Why does he have carte blanche access to the CPD? He doesn't work for them. He just has a little outpost there. Hiding the close relationship between CPD's chief Ken Berkowitz and House Defendant Higgins, and failing to document the condition of and supervise Miss Reed's SUV once it entered the Sallyport garage at CPD and allowed the undocumented destruction of this taillight. And the CPD's failures caused harm to foreseeable class of plaintiffs, namely Miss Reed. Then civil conspiracy against both defendants. MSP and CPD had a common design with each other and with Proctor, Buchanan, Tully, and the occupants of 34 Fairview Road on the morning of January 29, 2022, to unlawfully and improperly direct the investigation into the death of John O'Keefe III towards Miss Reed. They each acted negligently and otherwise tortiously and unlawfully as alleged above and in the amended complaint attached as Exhibit 1 and incorporated by reference in furtherance of their co-conspirators' goals. Jury demand. Miss Reed respectfully requests a jury trial on all matters so triable. Prayer for relief. Wherefore, Miss Reed respectfully requests that the court grant her the following relief. Enter judgment in her favor and against each relevant defendant on each count of this complaint. Award her damages in an amount to be calculated at trial, along with pre- and post-judgment interest, costs, and expenses. Award her reasonable attorney's fees incurred in connection with this litigation, and grant her such other relief as the court deems equitable and just. Respectfully submitted, Kara Reed, by her attorneys. These are the audio files. We don't get to see them or hear them, obviously. And these are her other civil suits against the House defendants and Proctor and Tully and Buchanan. Whoops. This is all stuff that I've done videos on. So, I don't know. I'm sure a lot of that stuff won't be allowed in. Not because it's old, but because it doesn't really have anything to do directly with what she's accusing them of, you know. But like the planting of evidence, or the planting of cocaine, you know, on a suspect, that will most likely be allowed in because that directly relates to what Karen has been saying happened to her as far as being framed. But I don't think they're showing their whole hand. I think they have worse. I think we haven't seen the worst. I think that there's a lot more to be revealed. It's like a this was just like a taste test, you know, to give people a little sniff of what they have. But I don't think they would put all the worst ones out there already. I think they're saving those for the grand finale, if you will. I mean, they're pretty smart, so I don't think that this is it. I would be willing to guarantee, I'd be willing to bet my life on the fact that this isn't it. This is just a minor introduction, a minor taste test, if you will, of what is to come. And I'm here for it, because it's just unreal. And you wonder how many towns and cities is this going on in. I mean, Boston's always been known for corruption, but they're just going to have to get rid of everybody and start over, I think, in Boston. I don't think there's any hope for Boston. Unless Deitch gets elected, which I think is the best thing for them. But I don't know. What a couple pieces of shit. And Proctor needs to move. I mean, he can't. Don't do that to your kids, dude. Don't subject them to your bullshit. Because you know that they're going to get picked on at school, and people are going to be like, oh, I know who your dad is. You know, and they're going to be accused of being racist and misogynistic, and just give them a relief from that. Just leave. Move somewhere else. Move out of. You're going to have to leave the state for sure. Possibly the country. The only thing is this case is international. So you're kind of known everywhere, I think. I think you're best off if you just buy some isolated land in Alaska and just live off the land by yourself. I don't foresee you staying married for much longer if Elizabeth didn't know about any of this. If she knew you were like this, she's probably sticking by you. But if she didn't know all this about you, she's gone. She's gone. And you deserve it. Sergeant Goode, I noticed you had a wedding ring on in that picture of you on the witness stand. So what does your wife think of this? Neither one of you could ever work in law enforcement again. The post commission's going to see to that. They're going to, you know, make you surrender your law enforcement certifications. And I don't think you're able to get, I think once the post commission dings you, you're done, no matter where you live, right? I don't know. I know Proctor didn't get his pension. I don't know if Sergeant Goode will get his. I believe Sergeant Goode has the 20 years in, because he had already been with the Canton Police Department for a few years when Proctor got hired in 2013. So, you know, technically Proctor could have had his, right? No, that's just 10 years. 2013 to 2023, that's just 10. So Proctor doesn't get a pension. And I don't know if Goode's going to get his or not. I don't know. They didn't say he resigned. I mean, they didn't say he retired. They said he resigned. So does that make a difference? Who knows? I just find it funny that all these people, including the DA's office of Norfolk County, are trying to get Aiden Carney on all these, intimidation charges. He's facing, 90 years in prison if he's convicted on these charges. And when they opened his phone extraction, what did they find? Some perverted pictures or perverted sexual, fantasies. That's it. You didn't see him talking about black people the way Proctor is. I mean, they say that you can tell how they say you can tell the truth about how a person is by what they do when they are not being when they don't think they're being watched. And Proctor's a bad boy. I mean, obviously he's a piece of shit. And when he's not being watched, he's up to absolutely no good. You can tell by his text messages. Aiden, he didn't have any any bias or racial or grape type text messages. Nothing. He just had some sexual fantasies and maybe some dirty pictures of himself. But other than that, he's squeaky clean. And yet you're trying to put him in prison. Proctor's the one that should be in prison. I don't think he'd last. I think he'd get eaten alive in there, though. Especially if these texts all got out and if a lot of these prisoners find out that he possibly could have put them in prison under false pretenses, which a lot of them are finding out. And a lot of them want their cases reopened. So I don't think he'd last in prison. He needs to just move on out of here. I don't know if he's allowed to leave the state or whatever, but if he is, he might want to go to Mexico or something. I don't think they know who he is there yet. They know who he is in Canada. They know who he is across the pond. So, you know, I don't know. But he's not wanted around here in the U.S. I don't live in Boston or Massachusetts. I live in California, but he's not wanted here either. So, yeah. And, you know, they made it sound like, well, these are old text messages and they don't really apply to the time period where Karen Reed was being investigated. And that's true. But you don't just, it's not just a phase you go through. It's not just like a growing pain where, oh, he's racist for the next 5 years and then he's done. This is some deep-seated hate that he has. I don't know where he learned it. I don't know if his parents are like that. Maybe his dad's like that. I don't know. He had to have learned it somewhere. Maybe they just hide it well. Maybe his dad is like that. Maybe a lot of the people in Canton are like that. We just don't know it. I don't know. But that's some pretty deep-seated hate there. You don't just get over that in a couple of years. That's in his blood. He's living and breathing those feelings. So, yeah, they're old text messages, but they still describe the way he feels, I believe. So anyway, that's all I have for today, and I thank you again for joining me. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and comment, and don't forget to comment if you have any cases or anything you'd like me to cover. I know that we were supposed to cover the Kalia Toll, the OnlyFans mom. Her trial was supposed to start on Monday. It was pushed back to the end of June, but I'm hearing that they're not going to be streaming it or televising it. So I'm going to have to check into that. That may be another case that I struck out on. It seems like all the cases I want to follow aren't being streamed live, so it's really frustrating. But leave some suggestions in the comment section if you have any cases that you want to look into, or any suggestions as far as changes to my channel and my content. I don't know. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Stay out of the heat, wear sunscreen, and ciao for now.